Yeah, hello everyone. We are going to have a discussion on qualitative research. Qualitative research is one of the approach um, of research. So basically, in most cases, you see that we have two major approaches to research. That is using quantitative methods and now using qualitative methods. But also the other third component is mixed research methods, where you have quantitative approaches and then also qualitative approaches. So when we talk about qualitative research, our focus is basically on trying to understand people's experiences uh, through uh, observation or through conducting interviews with them. And when we do these things, we basically describe whatever we get from the participants in form of words, and it is actually no emphasis on numerical data. Okay, but that does not necessarily mean that you cannot use uh, a little bit of numerical data in qualitative research. So when we go and interview these research participants, uh, and then we collect this rich data, because it is actually huge, or it is robust data that you collect. And then through your analysis, in most cases, you can be able to get a theory. So a theory can emerge from qualitative data. So qualitative research is usually conducted in natural settings. This is what we are referring as naturalism. The fact is that we don't want to manipulate the environment in which the research participants are in. So if we want to look at, for example, their social way of life, then we go to where they are in that setting and then start to collect data on their daily way of life. Um, the other issue is that we want to get the participants um, understanding or what meaning they make out of experiences that they have been through. So the focus is basically interpreting the research data using the lenses of the research participants. So our focus is basically to derive meaning out of what they're saying, also derive understanding out of what they're saying. Um, the other point is on flexibility in research strategies when you're using qualitative research. This point actually refers to the fact that unlike quantitative research, qualitative research allows you to revisit some of the steps that you have actually perhaps uh, you are done with. So, for example, when you go into data collection in qualitative research, you can actually refine your questions, your research questions, while conducting the data collection. That means you revisit the nature of research questions that you had that were guiding you in conducting the research. So as you conduct research, as you're conducting qualitative research, you still have the room to come back and revisit some of the strategies that you had chosen in conducting that particular research. So in a way, we can say that qualitative research is circular. Okay. And then the other issue is that you can see that you can actually adjust even your theories, or your framework, or even your paradigm as you're conducting the research. So that means that you tend to adjust your research strategies as you're continuously conducting research. So so it is in a kind of way iterative, like, or it involves some kind of you going back and revisit and repeating something that you might have done that perhaps you also want to change a little bit. We also recognize that the researcher has a very big role to play in interpreting uh, qualitative research data. So it is in a it's kind of research that is interpretive, like that the focus is to gain what the research participants are actually communicating or even experiencing. And also, qualitative research is thick in description, so you use a lot of words to bring out the context, the content, and the kind of setting in which the research is being conducted. So the advantages of qualitative research are that it allows you to conduct the research without having to manipulate the surrounding or the environment in which the research participants are in. And then the other thing is that um, the focus is on gaining insight um, about the research participants' experiences uh, or phenomena that they have ever experienced. And then it allows you to generate new ideas that perhaps you have not even thought about when conducting research. So new ideas actually emerge because you go into the research process without a kind of predetermination of what you want to seek for. Okay, so as you immerse yourself in this research process, uh, you will find out that new ideas, new theories, new angles to the research problem are actually emerging. So that is something that actually makes qualitative research different from quantitative research, because with quantitative research you basically know what you're going to seek for, and you're basically targeting that. So you actually have predetermined the questions that you, and the nature of data that you want. You actually have an idea about it. But with the qualitative research, new things can emerge from the field, and then you actually incorporate them into your research report. There are people who actually criticize qualitative research. They say that qualitative research is not reliable. And this perhaps is also contributed to like the fact that the researcher himself actually will regard the researcher himself or herself as a research tool. So the researcher as a research tool in qualitative research is that the researcher actually brings their own experiences, their own insights, and sometimes their own bias into the research process. And this sometimes makes qualitative research reliability to be questioned. And then the other issue, which is also related to what I've just explained, is the subjectivity, which I've just explained that the interpretation um, of this data, qualitative data, um, is subject to being influenced by the researcher himself because of their own perception, their own insights, their own experiences. Um, and then that the fact that also qualitative research is not usually conducted in a way that you get the sample, the sample in a representative manner. It is usually very hard to make generalizations about uh, a given population. Okay, um, because of issues to do with sampling, the research context, and things like that. And then it requires a lot of effort in managing, especially the rich data that we collect. So it requires a lot of effort. So we basically say that it is the barriers. We use qualitative research in public health because uh, numbers alone don't tell us the, the complete picture or the bigger picture. So, for example, you'll have patients who are not complying with medications. For example, let us say patients are on TB medications and then they're non-compliant. And this poses a very big public health challenge because resistance to the usual tuberculosis medication may develop, and this becomes a problem. So you are not only interested on in how many people are not complying with the medication, but you're also interested in knowing what are their experiences in taking these medications, and perhaps this can be a way in which you drugs for tuberculosis, for example, can be uh, modified such that patients become more compliant. So we basically gain insight on what experiences these patients go through. And this helps in informing our decisions on what we can actually do. And then the other thing is that it helps in evaluation of policies and also programs. So when you implement a program, for example, you conduct a health communication program, or you introduce a law that concerns about a law that concerns uh, issues of public health. You want to see how people are complying and what is the impact of the policy, the program, or even the law on people's ways of life. So this helps us to either refine the program or refine the policy in one or the other. So getting what people actually go through after implementation of the program or even a policy, that understanding is very critical in redesigning programs or even changing the programs entirely. Sometimes we may not actually have a deeper understanding of the unintended consequences of the program. So such in-depth interviews with the beneficiaries or the people who are affected by a given program is very, very important. And then we conduct research um, based on assumptions and norms or even standards. So these are basically what we call research paradigms. The thing is that there is a philosophical framework that guides us in conducting research. We don't just go there and then start collecting data without deeply thinking about the research problem that we have and how we are going to approach it. So we have to think about the different assumptions, different values, different norms and standards um, that can actually make um, the research rigorous. So basically, when we talk about paradigms, we basically refer to the nature of knowledge that is out there. Mm, if we are seeking for knowledge, uh, how do we approach uh, um, uh, the research question? Because basically, when we go out there uh, conducting research, we are seeking for knowledge. So the nature of knowledge that is out there determines how we actually go and get that knowledge. So that is basically what we call paradigm. So we have four paradigms listed here, and we shall go through each of these. So the positivism paradigm is the one which emphasizes that the reality exists out there and it can be objectively measured. And it is actually independent of any individual's perception of what the world is. So this is the basis for scientific inquiry, or what we call the scientific method. So basically, this is the basis of most quantitative research approaches, because it believes that there is a stable reality that is out there that can that if we use the appropriate tool, we can go and actually measure that kind of reality. And then the other paradigm is the one called the interpretism paradigm. For it recognizes that the reality is made out of people's interpretation. So people interpret reality uh, based on their own experiences, and not necessarily that the reality is actually stable and it is independent. So, for example, in line with public health, you may have an understanding of what tuberculosis is. Okay, you know that it is caused by a microorganism and that it affects mainly the lungs, but it can also migrate to other organs. That is what you know scientifically. But you will still get people in our communities who will link tuberculosis uh, uh, to perhaps issues to do with being cast, or issues to do with um, divine or traditional uh, uh, punishments that are put on people because of bad things that they have done or things like that. So that is their own reality. There is that reality, the real stable reality that we know, but also people have their own realities that they create. So people interpret diseases in their own way. This interpretation actually is rooted in their social norms. And therefore, we say that the reality is actually socially constructed. And when we conduct research using this paradigm, we are basically seeking to understand what people uh, what what people know, or what they interpret uh, uh, out of their interpretation of experiences or even diseases that they are experiencing. Okay, that is that is what we want. Now, our focus is not to explain that, you see, tuberculosis is caused by microbacterium that starts to multiply and then causes this kind of changes and things like that. No. We want to understand if this tuberculosis is actually manifesting uh, as night sweats and also emaciation. Um, According to the people that we are investigating, what do they make of the emaciation? What interpretation do they make out of the emaciation, for example? Okay, that's the emphasis. So reality is socially constructed, meaning that our social norms or cultures influence the way we interpret reality. And then we have the fourth paradigm. We can call it critical paradigm. We can call it the critical approaches. Now, it is very important for us to recognize that research is not only conducted to only generate knowledge, but it is also conducted to reveal to policymakers the ills of the society, the ills that certain communities in our societies experience. The goal underlying that is that we want to expose these ills such that change is created. So it has an inherent goal to create a change in society. So the focus basically is on bringing this out to policymakers, to decision makers, or even to politicians. Um, so feminist approach actually fall under the critical approaches. This is to So the feminist approach is basically to emphasize the issues to do with how gender uh, and the power and decision making actually interact. But also the emphasis is to look at or to conduct research in a way that actually brings out this very clearly, so that it can actually be seen that um, gender and power have a way in which they influence, for example, health outcomes or even decision making or even allocation of resources. So the emphasis is also um, uh, on conducting research with the recognition of the power imbalances and also using uh, making sure that the voice of females actually come out very clearly, or the voice that is gender sensitive actually comes out very clearly. So we do actually um, conduct research based on, yes, based on one, the paradigms, but also based on pattern research designs. So we are going to look at each of these research designs and know what they mean. So in certain cases, you don't have a lot of research participants uh, to actually conduct uh, research uh, on, but they are unique individuals who you would actually wish to ask questions related to their unique experiences, and therefore the research approach that could be appropriate in this case is a case study. So you basically take a deep analysis of this particular individual. Uh, it can be an organization or a group, and understand the experiences that they go through. Okay, so it could be an organization, let us say, for example, an NGO that is trying to do something innovative that has not been done um, elsewhere, because the approaches that they are using are actually very unique, and you want to understand their experiences in using this approach. What are the benefits associated with the approach, the challenges, and other questions that could be related to how perhaps other organizations can actually adopt the strategy and how the strategies can actually be modified. So that becomes a case study. Okay, so it can be individuals, it can be organizations, it can be groups of people, it can be a particular community, you know, of people. Ethnographic research is one that actually focuses uh, on one group of people, of a group on. Ethnographic research actually focuses on a group of people uh, that you want to understand their ways of life. So basically, um, your emphasis is to see their cultures, their norms, their practices and values in their own natural setting. So, for example, you want to be interested in how a particular ethnic group or you want to be interested in knowing the ways of life of a particular ethnic group, sub-ethnic group, or even tribe or clan, or whatever it is. So basically, you go there, like you often, uh, it involves observation, interviews, and things like that. You go and perhaps even stay with this kind of people and then start to collect data about the things that you're seeing about their culture, practices, and norms. Grounded theory is a research design that focuses on um, exploring how and why particular events occur, and also it focuses on uh, uh, how and why people behave in a certain way. Okay, usually the end point is that we develop a theory to explain how and why people behave in a particular way. So at the end of it all, we get a theory out of grounded research. Um, phenomenological research design seeks to look for people who have experienced a particular phenomena. And then these people actually tell us their experiences. So, for example, uh, if you have a mother who has who had a premature delivery, Usually these mothers are hospitalized for a longer period until the baby can, the baby is okay. So you might be interested in knowing the experiences of mothers who have uh, premature deliveries. Okay, so you want to understand the challenges that they go through, the emotions associated with the long-term hospitalization. You want to understand issues to do with how they cope up with the stress, how they carry out activities like, for example, breastfeeding and things like that. So that is what we call phenomenological research design. And then the other research design is the narrative research. And you want to hear an individual's experience in the form of a story. Okay, so the person who has experienced this. So, for example, you have a patient who, for example, had COVID-19 and was hospitalized and put in ICU. So you want to get that kind of understanding, how they went through the whole experience. So you use narrative research to get that kind of data. Then we move to needs to be deleted. So how do you collect data? Yes, I earlier on said that you collect data through interviews, observations, and also document review. So we are going to look at this one. Research participant observation involves you seeing what people actually do in their own natural setting. And then with the qualitative interviewing, it can be a focus group discussion. It can be an online interview. It can be a one-on-one interview. And then you might also be interested in understanding how decisions are made, for example, in an organization. So to do that, you may need to follow a trail of communications between the management of the organization. And so when you want to do that, you analyze conversations. It could be emails, it could be other means of communication between the individuals that are concerned with making such decisions. So that we use the conversation analysis or discourse analysis to be able to arrive at the conclusions that you can make. And then you can also use documentary review. You look at the documents. It could be letters, it could be memoirs, it could be other maybe public relations documents and things like that. So what you have to note is that you can use a combination of these methods. You may not necessarily have to choose only one method and use it, but you can have multiple methods together. The interview is actually the commonest methods of collecting data in qualitative research. You can decide to have a questionnaire that is in a way going to guide you in the interview process. So if you use that, then it means that this is going to be a semi-structured interview. And then the other technique that you perhaps may use would be the narrative. You want to understand the chronology of events as narrated by the research participant. And then you can have multiple people about 8 of them sitting down with you, uh, having a conversation on your research topic. Uh, when you do that, that is a focus group discussion. Usually, 8 people are enough in conducting this focus group discussion. Um, make sure that the seating arrangement is okay to make sure that you are in clear view of everyone and that you can encourage each of the members to actually participate. You may need an assistant to help you in recording this information, but also in documenting some of the things that cannot be captured through the audio recordings. The next step is the data analysis and interpretation. The key issue here is that data analysis and interpretation and also data collection may go at the same time. Okay, it's not like quantitative research where you first collect the data and then now you move to the step of analysis and then now drawing conclusions. With qualitative research, you can be collecting data as well as refining your data collection tools, your strategies, and things like that. So you can take as dimensions. These are things that we earlier on talked about um, in the futures of qualitative research. The emphasis is that research can involve a kind of repetition. You go forth, but you can also back and check whether the data that you have is actually what the research participant actually wanted you to capture. So you may still call back and find out whether um, your interpretation or what they actually say is what you actually captured. That is very important. But also it is inductive that as you continue to get this data, you start to make many insights, and also you start to see theories emerging from the data. Then the other issue that we also hinted on is the subjectivity of the researcher. The researcher is a research tool in qualitative research because they influence, they have a contribution in interpreting the research data. So it is very important that this actually comes out very clearly and actually documented in the whole research, in the research that this is the researcher comes from this kind of background and carries this kind of experiences and insights, and this may influence or may not influence the research because of ABCD. So